The Autoline Supplier Symposium is brought to you by our signature sponsor, Ford Motor Company, Go Further, and also by Continental Automotive, the future in motion. Visit continental-automotive.com. And Federal Mogul, the Powertrain. It's what drives us.
Welcome to day 2 of the Autoline Supplier Symposium, coming to you from the floor of the 2014 North American International Auto Show in Detroit at the Ford display, where people are packing it to see the new Mustang, the new F-150, and maybe to hear the Autoline Supplier Symposium. And we want to thank our signature sponsor, Ford, for making this all possible. And joining me right now is Jim Buczkowski, the Director of Electrical and Electronic Systems at Ford. And Jim, what do you make of this show?
Oh, it's tremendous. We're really excited to be here. Just the product is great, right? Just if you see all of what's around you, the exciting Mustang, the great F-Series, but you know, from Focus, Fiesta, all the way up to the full-size trucks, it's an excellent opportunity for people to come out and see product. Great product.
A lot going on here. Hey, let's talk electrical and electronic systems. So much talk in the industry today about vehicle-to-vehicle communication, V2V or V2X to the infrastructure,
sure.
The whole connected car thing. What's Ford looking for in this technology? What role do you guys want to play?
Well, first of all, I'd say connectivity really covers a whole gambit, from simply connecting your phone up so you can drive and make a call in a much safer way, all the way to cars talking to other cars, cars talking to the infrastructure, traffic lights and so on. And so there's real opportunity to use those technologies to create a safer experience, help drivers drive better and be safer. And so partnering with our suppliers is key to mature the technology and get it ready, to make it very affordable, because we really believe in democratizing technology. It's not just technology for those that can afford it. If it's great technology, saves lives, we want everybody to have it. So suppliers can help us mature the technology, make sure it's right, and also get it very affordable for our customers.
You say mature the technology, but this is a technology that's evolving very rapidly right now. So we're talking to the supplier community here. What kind of technologies would you like the supplier community to bring to the Ford Motor Company?
The one thing about electronics that's super is what we call integration, bringing more features and functions together, right? So as you think about wireless kind of technologies, which is what we need for vehicle-to-vehicle communication, how can we get more features and functions working off the same technology, bringing it together, lowering the cost and so on. So their ability to bring those technologies, help us merge those technologies together and create very affordable solutions for our customers.
Any specifics that you can give us in particular?
Well, I think when we start combining features and functions, so there's some driver assistance features that we can get with vehicle-to-vehicle communication that help in safety, and there's other features as well that can provide other kinds of information to customers that make the experience, driving experience better. So leveraging those technologies together is a great opportunity.
When you talk about these driver assist technologies, ultimately that's going to lead to semi-autonomous cars and then fully autonomous cars. Walk me through your vision of what that timeline might be. You know, what sort of features and when?
Well, I think it's already started. You know, you could go all the way back to original speed control, where the vehicle is controlling the speed. You still have to steer. You still have to man the brake and so on. But then we start to add things like forward collision warning, radar systems to look what's in front of you, and not only look what's in front of you, but track the vehicle and keep a set distance behind. And if you're approaching a vehicle too fast, to alert you to put the brakes on. You add things like lane departure warning to help you stay in the lane, a camera that watches the lines on the road, alerts you if you're going over the line or whatever, and in fact can even help you stay in the line, keep the vehicle centered. Combine those two together and you now start to get other features, if you add brake assist in that, to actually stop the vehicle if there's a vehicle in front of you and so on. And you can see how we're moving forward toward a system that has potentially full control.
A little while back, Ford talked about having traffic jam assist, where you have adaptive cruise control that will do some of the steering,
right.
Speeds up to, say, 30, 40 miles an hour.
Exactly.
Ford had hinted maybe 2015 time frame we might see that. Can you bring us up to date?
We don't really give any hints on it, but it's coming. It's coming. As I mentioned, all the pieces that I talked about are part of a traffic jam assist feature. So the technologies are all maturing, we're bringing them together, and you can look forward to it pretty soon.
Okay. Google, of course, has been heavily involved in fully autonomous cars. They say their technology will be ready, showroom ready, by 2017. Nissan, a few display stands over here, says they're going to have fully autonomous cars by 2020. When do you think this will all roll out?
I think Google's an outstanding company. They have great technology, great researchers that are really addressing the challenges. There's quite a few challenges yet to face.
Not just technical ones either.
Exactly, and so there's still a lot of work, and we work with a lot of different partners in this particular area. The traditional supply base, as well as new players like Google that are coming up with new algorithms using software and sensors to sense this with maps, high resolution maps and so on. So I think it's coming, but there's some big challenges. We look at it as assisting the driver, making safer roads, but there is that interaction between the driver and the vehicle. It's always going to be there, and I think there's still a lot of work to be done in that handoff and hand back as well.
So you seem to be one who's saying maybe more like 2025 we'll see this?
I'm not going to put a prediction out there. Okay. I'm going to focus as a technology guy, focus on the challenges we have in front of us, and if we can solve those quicker, it'll be sooner. If some new challenges come up, like the snow that's outside and inclement weather conditions and so on, could push it out. So won't make a prediction, but I do know the things that we need to work on.
How do you think Ford should approach this? Should you buy this technology, or should you develop these systems in-house?
It's always going to be a combination. I think that Ford, we really value great partnerships. And we can't invent every technology. We know our business. We think we know our business pretty well in terms of automotive. But it is combining sources, whether it's sensor technology, whether it's software and software algorithms. So partnerships are always going to be important. And as I said, these fully automated vehicles are going to be a combination of technologies and sensors and so on. So it'll be good collaborative partnerships that really deliver this.
Can you mention who you're collaborating with?
No, I can't.
Okay, I thought it was worth asking nonetheless. Let's turn the talk to infotainment and connectivity. Consumers love it, and consumers hate it.
Yeah.
It's been wildly controversial. How do you see this evolving?
Well, it's tough being on the leading edge. These are experiences people want to have or have outside of their vehicle, and they want to have inside the vehicle. Whether they're getting it from a phone, a tablet device, an iPhone, whatever it is, they want to bring some of those experiences into the vehicle, and finding the right way to do it is what this is all about, because they're asking for it. And we want to do it in a safer way, hands on the wheel, eyes on the road, and so on. And so a lot of it is about that human-machine interface. How do you make it very intuitive, but yet they can get exactly what they want? So, and we also have to appeal to younger drivers that are very familiar with the technology. Maybe they played Xbox or PlayStation for a long time and they're really ready for it, versus those that say, hey, I just want to tune to AM, FM, and that's about it.
When it comes to my Ford Touch and Sync, it's generated some big complaints. I also understand there's an 80% take rate with these technologies. I guess my question is, how do you make it easier, not just to operate, but to learn and be very robust?
Well, that's the secret. That is the secret that we're all searching for, is that way that everyone, not just the technology literate, have a fast learning curve and can come up the curve quickly, but those that maybe are a little more conservative about it, or want a little slower approach, that they can get what they want as easy as possible. And it has to do with how you lay out the information, how you present it, what kind of controls you have, and so on. And we do a lot of market research. We have a lot of simulation. We do a lot of lab testing to see, look at tasks as people do tasks. What tasks work very efficiently for them? What can they pick up quickly? What are more challenges, and what is more challenging to them? And we compare them, and that's how we're making decisions going forward.
A lot of surveys of consumers take place in the first 90 days of ownership. I know with my smartphone, a year or two later, I'm learning things that it can do. Have you tracked it all, whether there is a learning curve that somebody who might not like the system at first goes, yeah, you know what, here it is 2 years later and I love it?
Well, I think we have both actual data and anecdotal data too, that people over time get used to the system. It's still our job to make it as fast as possible and easy as possible, right out of the gate, being able to use it. And I think it really involves having a system that you can learn with, that learns with you, and that presents things in a way at a rate that you can digest them. And so that's really the secret. When you get in, you feel comfortable. Over time, you get more and more engaged at the rate that you feel comfortable with, and you're not, bombarded with everything, the first time you sit in the vehicle.
Back in the 90s, there was a lot of talk about transitioning from a 12-volt system in a car to a 48-volt system. It never went anywhere, much not of anywhere. Now I'm hearing more and more of that talk. As more and more of the car is electrified,
right,
there's talk of going back to 48 volts. Do you see that happening?
We're doing a lot of research into that as well, too, studying the best way to do it. The big challenge is everything's been designed for 12 volts. And so if you want to migrate to 48 volts, do you redesign everything? Do you have a system that's partially 48 volts and partially 12 volts and so on? And you got to do that very affordably, right? And so a lot of the work, there is advantage. We have a lot more high power consumption things, steering rack controls, electric motors and so on, that need a lot of power, and it's much more efficient to use a 48 volt system. We also have a lot of systems, just pure electronic systems, that don't need a whole lot of power as well too. So looking at split systems that have the 48 volts for the high power consumption items, and the low voltage, maybe even lower voltage than 12 volts, because they're just more efficient for just plain electronics. So we're still in the phase, the issue is really the transition. How do you get there from here? And having to tool up and redesign every module on the vehicle because you're migrating to 48 volts is really difficult to do and not affordable. So getting there from here is the challenge.
What kind of guidance are you giving suppliers then as they plan to design for future vehicles? What are you telling them?
Well, electrical architecture, and I come from the electrical side, but electrical architecture is very important. How we're sharing much more data throughout the vehicle, from say the engine control to the infotainment system to the chassis controls and so on. Creating much more efficient architectures in the system is where we're focusing a lot of attention going forward. Again, so that we can add systems over time, or take systems, integrate systems over time and so on, and it's a much easier job. So working with suppliers, we've got a great relationship with suppliers, sharing their technology, putting those technologies on a timeline and so on. So it's a great opportunity as we meet with them to understand the technology we have. Again, we're very much into partnerships and relationships, and having them bring technology to us, and together we prioritize and look at delivery in the future.
Okay, last question. A lot of people are saying that the automobile is merely becoming an extension of their smartphone or tablet. And yet there's all different makes and all different standards. What is Ford doing to make sure that its consumers can easily, seamlessly go from one platform right to the other?
That's a big challenge, and that's been part of our strategy since the early days of Sync. We didn't want to force you to buy a particular phone because you had a Ford vehicle, and so Sync really leveraged standards like Bluetooth and USB, which are consumer electronics standards, to allow you to have a Windows-based phone or an Android-based phone or an Apple-based phone, and they all work. And so working with the consumer electronics business and their standards is really the way to be able to mesh the consumer electronics business with the auto business. Now, there are challenges with that, the robustness and so on, but again, having that working relationship, really not trying to develop something new, but leveraging something that's already there is really key.
There seemed to have been something of a gulf between Detroit and Silicon Valley, but it seems to me there's a lot of bridges being built there now.
Absolutely. Silicon Valley is a great source of innovation, and today, for the Ford Motor Company, we embrace, whether it's a startup company or whether it's a traditional large Intel or Google or Microsoft or Texas Instrument or whatever, wherever the innovation is, we look at it in terms of how it can benefit our customers. And so certainly everybody loves cars. The Mustang that's back there, if you go to Silicon Valley, those guys love it as well too. I get so many compliments about cars and the auto business and so on. So it really is a different day today than it was.
Jim Buczkowski, Director of Electrical and Electronic Systems at the Ford Motor Company. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Hey, we're going to be back in about 5 minutes or something like that with another live panel. Sit tight, and in the meantime, take a look at this. Joining me in the studio right now is Jeff Cly, the president for North America for the giant automotive supplier Continental, and great to have you here, Jeff.
Great to be here as well, John. Always nice to be with you.
As you know, I love all this autonomous technology, and Continental is absolutely one of the leading suppliers developing this technology. Give us a little update. You've gone out and gotten some extra partners. You guys are taking this seriously.
We've been taking it seriously for a long time. It's kind of our roadmap to what we call, at the end, fully automated driving. And we started it way back with some of the advanced technologies with some of the driver assistance. We now see many more steps with some of our advanced sensors. And we also see the need for cloud services, cloud-based, and that's why we teamed up, to your point, with Cisco. And that's the information coming into the vehicle, and also with IBM to really look at the back end and the cloud computing to really enable what we will ultimately see in we think about 2025, a fully automated driving scenario.
And talk a little bit about the technology that Continental's bringing to this.
Certainly we have all the sensors with LiDAR and radar and just about every sensor on the vehicle itself, as well as many of the enabling hardware technologies, not just the sensors, but also some of the advanced braking to enable the acceleration and braking. So we're big in the hardware side. But what we're also evolving much more into is the services and the software side. Because at the end, automated driving is going to require much more back end and software than it is hardware. And that's really where the intelligence is, and that's where we're really driving our company.
I believe the intelligence has got to be, how do you synthesize all these sensors talking to each other into the cloud and then driving a car safely?
Sensor fusion is something that we've been working on for an awful long time, but it even takes it to the next level. With all the information now that's available, what do you do with it, and how do you define what the driving scenario is and how to react? And what's really interesting is as you, over time, you transition between the vehicle driving and the person behind the wheel driving. As you transition back and forth, one of the big tasks we have is how do you hand it over to the vehicle and how do you give it back to the driver? How do you enable that? How do you notify them with what information? And the HMI is a big challenge for us as well, and it's something we're spending a lot of time on.
A lot of questions to get answered. If you go back 2-3 years ago, very few automakers had talked about them working on autonomous technology. In the last 12 months, it's like everybody came out and started talking about their autonomous cars. Are there a bunch of different car companies talking to you in your technology, or how's the industry, from the car company standpoint, approaching this?
Yeah, every customer, of course, is working on some level of what we call automated driving, whether it's simple, low automation with lane departure warning and some electronic technologies for emergency brake assist, all the way to the fully automated. And everybody's got a roadmap, and we're talking to all the customers about their roadmaps and how we can enable them, assist them. And again, everyone's got a different scenario. And of course, I can't talk about our customer plans, but everyone's working. Every customer has also a little bit different timeline. Some think it's going to happen faster, some think slower, some think it'll be more big steps, some think it'll be more of an evolution. So it's kind of all over the map, and a lot of it is the culture of the company.
It really is. You're saying 2025. Nissan came out in 2013 and said by 2020, we're going to have across-the-board autonomy. Google is talking about having it ready in 2018.
Part of it's how you define autonomy, too. We've got like 2016, we call it partially automated. Highway driving here to Chicago, you can be hands-off but ready to take over, but really aware of the driving scenario. 2020, we think a little bit more complex, a little bit more city. Again, the more city and the more traffic, it becomes more complex. Again, a little bit more hands-off, but be ready when the vehicle says take over, you got to be ready. 2025 is when it's really hands-off and the drive time becomes much more productive.
And costs. I mean, this is, besides figuring out how to make the technology all work and work robustly, you got to be looking at taking costs down.
Sensor development is probably one of the biggest elements to take costs down. I mean, some of these advanced sensors are really, really expensive. I mean, we know, some of the really advanced sensors, even dating back to the DARPA challenge, which was a defense industry or defense government funded. We had $70,000 and $80,000 sensors on these vehicles, right? And now those sensors obviously can't be used in production with the value of the proposition. So we're looking at a lot of reductions in costs. It takes time, though. It takes technology, but also takes volume. And the volume is I think, really the big enabler, and that's going to take time.
I talked to one of the lead development engineers at Audi on this, and he said he thought that the cost would come in below $3,000 when it hits the market. Does that sound crazy to you, or
I don't think it sounds crazy. Again, it depends on what do you define this driving scenario, right? I mean, is it really fully hands-off in every driving scenario? We haven't put a price tag on it, but absolutely for $3,000 you can get a certain amount of automated driving. It just depends on how many scenarios and how complex you want to be.
It's going to be fascinating to watch this development. One of the most exciting technological developments I've ever seen in the automotive industry.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It's probably one of the most exciting, and really it's been now quite a few years, but it seems like in the last year, the intensity of this technology has increased with all the customers, with all the suppliers. And what's also interesting is now the governments are starting to get more involved in it, and also the insurance agencies. And those are two big things we need to look at. I personally, we don't have a view that the government's going to mandate everything, but the government, I think, has a role to play in trying to enable safer driving, and that's clearly one of the things that this is going to drive. 95% of the accidents today on the roads are somehow human error, and this is a big step to reducing the number of issues related to human error.
Very promising. Jeff Clyde, thanks so much for coming in and talking about autonomous technology and Continental's involvement in it.
My pleasure. Thanks for asking, John. Have a great day.
Welcome back to the Autoline Supplier Symposium, coming to you live from the floor of the 2014 North American International Auto Show. We're down here during the industry days. That is, the media's cleared out. Now all the people who work on these cars have packed Cobo Center. We're sitting in and amongst the midst of them all here at the Ford display. Our next panel has been organized by the Original Equipment Supplier Association, the OESA. In fact, we've got the CEO of the OESA, Julie Fream, joining us for this panel. Also, Michael Martini, the president of Consumer OE for Bridgestone Americas, and Jim Teets, the CEO of ADAC Automotive. And great to have you all here on the panel.
Great to be here, John.
I bet most people have heard of Bridgestone, Firestone, and OESA, but Jim, just give us a quick thumbnail. What's ADAC Automotive?
We're a privately held Tier 1 injection molder, body color painter, assembly primarily of exterior trim products, most notably door handles, $250,000 roughly in revenue, 1,200 employees based in West Michigan.
Great. $250 million probably is the number though, right?
Excuse me, $250 million, 250, thank you.
Look, I wanted to bring the three of you together here today to talk about this relationship between automakers and suppliers, and even suppliers with their own suppliers, and where that relationship's going. You know, it had been shaky in the past, everyone's talking nice right now, but Julie, where do you see this?
Well, I certainly see that we've spent time as an industry working on the Tier 1 OE relationship and improving that. Obviously, different Tier 1s and different OEs are somewhere along that scale, but in general, it is much better now than it was, say, 10 years ago. I think the challenge that we have is, as we move forward, we have to transfer that improved relationship and move it to the Tier 1, Tier 2, and further down the supply chain. Put it into those relationships also.
Michael, you're in the thick of it all. You deal with so many different automakers, selling tires to them. How do you see it?
You know, for us, we do business with all 13 manufacturers in North America, and the relationship really is better than it ever has been. You know, there was a time just a few years ago that, you know, we were all at each other's throat. That's really changed. And one of the big things for me that's changed is, and you know this, John, is that, you know, 70% of technology used to be developed by the OEMs. Now, 70% of the technology is really coming from the supply community. You know, we're the ones who are developing some great stuff. The OEMs are doing just a fabulous job putting all that stuff together so it synchronizes the way it should, etc. But, you know, that whole relationship change where they're looking for us to be really a super partner with them because they need our technology and we need them. So it's just a much better relationship.
That's a great point. You know, the 70-30 flip that's taken place. the OEMs need suppliers more than ever right now, is what you're saying.
Yeah, they sure do. And, I'm so proud of, what OESA's done, et cetera, in letting the suppliers realize that that's really the case. And that for the first time, we really got to get out there and what I like to call insight selling. It's like, we have to know the market as well as the OEMs, because it doesn't help just going in and selling your part. You got to be as knowledgeable about them so you can paint the picture of why your technology is what they need. And we're all doing it. And whether it's door handles or tires, it's unbelievable the amount of technology that's going into every single part in the car.
Jim, I want to get your viewpoint on this whole relationship between OEs and suppliers too, because you're in a highly commoditized part of the business.
Exactly.
And so what's it been like for you?
I'll echo just what Julie said. I think, the trust and transparency, I've been in the business for 21 years, and I think the trust and transparency is at an all-time high. Now, some of it was born of the dark days of 08 and 09, but I think the collaboration going back and forth, from the OE to the Tier 1s is an all-time high. We need to be the industry experts, partly out of their downsizing, coming out of 09, but the technology more and more is coming from the supply base. So absolutely agree with both of my colleagues here.
Yeah, I'm somebody who sits back and looks at it from the outside, and and has been watching this industry a long time, and I've seen the ups and downs, and no question about it, we're on an up right now. My concern is that the industry gets complacent, makes a lot of money, and we start to go back to some of the bad habits. Julie, I know the OESA really had an issue with GM changing its terms and conditions last year. That's my concern. Is there danger of this great relationship sort of going back to the old way?
I don't think so. I don't think we can let the industry go there, and that's part of OESA's job, is to make sure that we continue that communication and don't let that happen. We have to stay connected. To your point, we've got to keep the technology flowing, and we've got to generate the new ideas, and that comes from the supply base. So I don't think the OEs will accept allowing those relationships to stray back, and I certainly don't think that the suppliers want to go there. So I don't think that's going to happen.
Mike, I know that you've been on supplier councils and the like. Does this get discussed at those meetings that you go to?
That is really an important point. I mean, the supplier councils are really there to get the supplier input. And I've been on supplier councils all the way back to in the 90s, to be honest with you. And they really have changed from an informational to where the OEMs are really trying to kind of pick our brains to say, what is the supply base really going to bring, and think about this. The other thing that I'll point out is, we've kind of had a wholesale change, at least in the Detroit 3. The guys that are ahead of the purchasing departments are now all guys that came out of the engineering group. I think that is a really key decision point and makes you think that, I think technology is pretty important when they're putting those type of peoples in those head roles.
I think that's an excellent point. I don't think in the history of the industry that I'm aware of, we've ever seen the heads of purchasing come out of product development and engineering. And I think it's right to your point.
Right.
You need somebody in that position who knows, no, we better spend a little bit more here, because this is hypercritical, and here's a place maybe we can go look for some cost savings. So I think you need somebody who really knows product in the position to make calls like that.
And Bob Lutz has been saying that for how long? He's a product guy, and we know that this industry is all about product. So, what? We hit it on the nail.
Jim, automakers, or I should say suppliers, have said, boy, I wish those car companies would bring us in earlier in a program, because we could bring ideas of how to cut costs, do things better. At your level, when you're talking trim and moldings, and do they bring you in at all early?
They do, but I think it's a push-pull relationship. I think you have to be forceful. You can't be shy and not be afraid to ask if you can get in and talk to them early on, get ideas, bring ideas. We try to routinely, we're not a huge company. We have 2 global partners, one in Germany, one based in Milwaukee, but we constantly try to have tech shows on a 2 to 2.5 year cycle at really our 5 largest OEM customers. So
Mike, are they bringing you in earlier in a program?
You know, they really are, because we're in that space that we need to be there to help them to get to 54.5 by 2025. So they're saying, hey, I got to see your technology map, and oh, by the way, show me your spending plan that gets you to those super high-tech products that'll get us to these kind of fuel economy levels. So
you're talking about low rolling resistance tires?
Yeah, low rolling resistance tires, but even new concepts. You know, we talked a little bit about the i3, you know, kind of a new, you know, carbon fiber, you know, the i8, you know, 2,600 pounds, not 3,900 pounds, but a new tire concept that aerodynamically goes through the air as well as provides all the materials with low rolling resistance. So
because they got those skinny little tires on it,
yeah,
right?
but not skinny little, skinny tall, so you get the aesthetics from the side. But they are slender. I like slender.
There you go.
You know,
slim fast tires.
Right. You got it.
But and you were the one who pointed out that the tire patch, because these are big tires, it's not as small a patch as you might think, and that's what makes it handle pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, we're all used to, you know, Corvettes and great sports cars that have these super, Paul W. said the other day, half block wide tires, you know, but the contact patches like this, you know, because they're so wide, they're not very long. But these tires, they're long, but narrower. So same relative contact patch for the weight that they need to carry.
Julie, we've been talking about the OEM supplier relationship. What about down the supply chain? You know, the tier ones dealing with their suppliers. I've heard stories that they're just as bad as the car companies in some cases. What has OESA found about it, and if so, what are you doing about it?
Well, we do hear there's issues there, certainly, and that's something we're going to be focusing on in the coming year. We are starting to do tooling forums to help the tooling suppliers. I know you talked with Lori Harbour about her study.
At yesterday's Supplier Symposium, we did.
Exactly, and that kind of information is something that will greatly help the whole supply chain. So we're doing that. We're working on capacity studies and how to better communicate capacity throughout the supply chain and sharing that information, not just with tier ones, but tier 2s and 3s. So there's a number of things that we're going to be doing over the coming year to really help build and bridge those supplier relationships from tier 1s to tier 2s and 3s.
Is it merely a matter of talking about it and making people aware, or are there systems, processes that you want to put in place? How do you move the needle on this?
Well, OESA has our model terms and conditions. We encourage companies to look at those, to use those, particularly as we have new suppliers coming into this space. You know, we have a lot of new suppliers coming in relative to electronics and other components going into the vehicle. They have not participated in the automotive space before, so they are in the process of sourcing now and need to understand what terms and conditions look like within this space. So that's one of the things that we do.
And then you just keep your ears open to hear how it's going, or do you have any way of really assessing it?
Well, we do know when companies use them, or at least ask for them and work with them on when we work with them on those. We do stay, I'll say, abreast to what's going on. We have 450 suppliers that are members of our organization, and so we definitely have our ear to the ground with all of them giving us feedback on a regular basis. So.
Yeah, and OESA, as you guys know, does a fabulous job with your surveys. You guys are unbelievable. So they're always in there asking, you know, what's working, what's not, and that provides all of us, big supplier, medium supplier, small supplier, with an understanding of, you know, what's working, what's not, you know, and so they've got their finger on the heartbeat of the industry for sure.
I think it's healthy too, you know, for tier ones. We talk about customer satisfaction surveys, all that. It's important for tier ones maybe to do a supply satisfaction survey once every 2 to 3 years. Get out there and see what they have to say about you. You may not like it, but you know, you prove it by your actions.
And that's a great point, Jim, because we do offer those too, and we will facilitate those and help suppliers, tier 1s, tier 2s, understand what their supply base thinks of them and how they could perhaps improve their relationships.
Yeah, OESA has got a fabulous program for doing that, an actual process that, why don't you guys try this? And I know some of the folks on the board and stuff who have done it have said, your model is fabulous.
Well, you know, that's probably a great place to wrap up this conversation. Everyone's singing the praises of the OESA.
Yay!
But it's good to hear that there is an organization like that that represents suppliers and can bring that community voice to the automotive community.
Absolutely.
So I want to thank you all. Julie Fream, Michael Martini, Jim Teets, thanks so much for coming on and discussing what's going on with this supply chain collaboration.
Thanks, John.
Glad to be here.
We're going to get the next panel lined up. We're going to be talking about a whole lot more things affecting the supplier community. So sit tight and take a look at this.
We had a CRV and then we had the Pilot. You got more with the Ford Escape. I'm glad we got the Escape and we switched.
Yay! I definitely like the Ford better. It's that foot-activated liftgate.
And I don't have to do all this. Yeah, I'm filling up a lot less than I did with my Honda. Awesome.
Make the switch to Ford Escape. Get 0% financing for 60 months or $2,000 switch bonus cash. See your local Ford dealer today.
Joining me in the studio right now is Rainer Juchstock, the Chief Executive Officer of Federal Mogul, the supplier company. And Rainer, great having you in the studio with me. There's been so much talk about fuel economy in this industry. Yeah, you know the story. CAFE in the U.S. is going to push automakers into 54.5 miles per gallon average. We've heard so much about what everybody's working on in terms of improving fuel efficiency. So much of the story is about lightweighting, making vehicles lighter. But you're deep inside the vehicle, deep inside the powertrain from a friction standpoint especially. Tell us about some of the things that you're working on in this regard.
Yeah, we have virtually two groups of products. One is really enabling new technologies, and I will come to this in the engine itself. And the second one is our core business, where we work on friction reduction like piston rings, engine bearings, and pistons.
Friction reduction and piston rings. I mean, piston rings are so thin. What kind of an improvement can you bring to an engine?
So, piston ring assembly has around 50% of the friction in an engine. So it's significantly because it's sealing the combustion. And therefore you have to have this friction to have the sealing function. And we think about 3 grams per kilometer is possible with a new piston ring coating alone.
Wait. 3 grams per kilometer CO2 reduction, just making the piston rings more slippery.
Yes. We do have very new innovative coatings. We call it Duraglide. And this coating is creating a significant lower friction coefficient at the engine with, number one, less friction for the engine. But secondly, because of this, you have less wear. So the piston ring is having a significant longer lifetime. And so the function of the piston ring will remain for the whole life of the engine.
You know, just so in case anybody in the audience isn't aware, 3 grams of CO2 reduction may not sound like a lot, but if you're an automaker that has got to meet the regulations, and Europe, of course, is targeting 95 grams for a car, a 3 gram reduction is rather significant.
Yes, you're right, 95 grams in 2021. And we think we can contribute 1.5 to 3% of this.
So what makes the piston rings have so much less friction?
It's on one hand the design with very sophisticated hydrodynamics, and secondly the coating. The coating is one of the core elements of a piston ring.
Of course, piston rings are only part of the friction story. You're also working on the main bearings in the crank on an engine, and tell us about that.
The bearing is a significant business for us. We're the world leader for engine bearings, and downsizing engine means also that the specific load on the bearing is increasing. And our newest product has a coating which makes this friction significantly lower despite the higher specific load.
And so describe a little bit, what's in this coating? What makes it so slippery?
can't tell you because it's
it's a trade secret.
Trade secret,
okay.
but when,
generally speaking,
when you see it, it's a polymer with hard particles, and it's has a red color. Normally, bearings is shiny aluminium. In this case, it has a red color because it's a specific polymer with hard particles in a nice mix with some self-lubricating elements in it, and so we can resist high load and low viscosity oil and still have low friction.
So you've developed these bearings and these piston rings, and what's been the reaction in the automotive industry? What are automakers telling you?
Say the reaction is good orders. We never had a product with such a deep ramp-up curve like these IROX bearings, because virtually everybody who is developing engines for start-stop is coming to us for these IROX bearings, because the IROX bearing is having a 5-time higher lifetime. So that means in start-stop, the engine bearing is 3 to 4 times more loaded, because permanently start and stop, the bearing is heavily under stress, and we have the product for it.
That's very interesting. Rainer Juckstock, thanks so much for coming in, because I think it's important for people to realize the extent that the auto industry is going to improve fuel economy deep inside an engine.
Thank you very much for having me.
Welcome back to the Autoline Supplier Symposium, coming to you live from the floor of the 2014 North American International Auto Show in Detroit. We got a great panel coming up right now where we're going to talk about some of the Chinese who are coming into the American auto industry. And joining me for this discussion are Jason Liu, the CEO of Key Safety Systems, Dazong Wang, the chairman of Ophoenix Capital Management, and Pin Li, the president of Wanxiang America. And it's great to have you all here.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So, Pin, let me start with you. What are the opportunities that Wanxiang sees in the North American market? The reason I ask, of course, is the Chinese market is the biggest in the world now. It's growing so quickly. Why your interest in North America?
First of all, we cannot forget that the United States was the largest market in the world. Although today it is not, but you never know. And for any company who wants to be an international company, you cannot miss this market, period. That's just the reality. So we came here 20 years ago, frankly speaking. So today, you know, we're still doing pretty good.
That's great to hear. Jason, same question to you. What are the opportunities that you see in the North American market?
I see a tremendous opportunity. This is one of the largest markets and a very open. A lot of a car company here. I think if a Chinese company want to continue advance their technology product, they have to come here.
Okay, and same question.
Sure, Ophoenix is a slightly different company. We are an advisory and an investment firm that focuses on the cross-border growth in the automotive industry. And our model is working with the Chinese suppliers as they go out, the overseas. And we certainly see a lot of opportunities in Michigan and in North America.
Oh, very interesting. So I want to get more specific into that, Dazong. When you advise your Chinese clients, what are you telling them is the best way to get established in the North American market? Joint ventures, acquisitions, greenfield sites, or does it vary by customer?
It's a vary by customer, but I see rooms for all three models. Of course, if you guide by the greenfield, the company got to have a little bit more capability, right? You got to have established the customer base, and you got to know a little bit how to manage the local, company. So you look at the statistically today, the acquisition. Maybe all the way other firms about 9-1. So moving forward, I still see the acquisition is still main mode of operations here. although other two firms will increase, as I see it.
So, Pin, I gotta believe that Wanxiang sees the way of getting established here through acquisition.
We have done all of this. And frankly speaking, it's not about the formality. It's about how do you create the value. Because when you come here, you're different. You're not like American. You're not American. So you bring the value that the other company who do not have here today. So the key issues in the global, market, how do you combine the strengths together? So I always talk, I mean, you can be one color of the rainbow. You're not the rainbow, but you are important to the rainbow. So the key issue is that if you can find a value creation, you can be a joint venture partner, you can build a greenfield operation, or you can do the acquisition. So, the key is the value creation.
Okay, so specifically, what is the value that Wanxiang is bringing to this North American industry?
At a different time, I would say there's a different value creation. At the older time, let's say 2007, 2008, your capital is very important. And also, before that time, you can bring the material from China at a much lower cost. But today, now you can help the company from here to go back to China. In fact, we're building a lot of plants in China today because that market is huge now. So coming from China, we can help a lot of companies go back much easier.
Very interesting. Jason, same question to you. What's the best way from Key's vantage point of getting established in North America?
Actually, Key is a North American-based company, American company, but running by a Chinese-born CEO. So one thing, what we see is come to North America, definitely a lot of opportunity for Chinese company. But for American company like us, we grow 10 times in China, which leverage both sides.
That's great when you can do it that way.
Yeah. I mean, add a little bit of the value on the pizza point. The value creation is very important. That's how we see there's a lot of synergies between the Chinese supplier and the supplier in North America. The market, obviously, China has grown fastest. Last year, they grew 15% to 22 million. But you look at other stuff, technology, the product, the access through global OEs, the supplier here in Michigan has a better advantage. But if we're combining the force, we can create the value. And that's our business model. That's why last year we bought 4. We made 4 investment over globally. 3 of them are here in North America. So.
Boy, you're turning into a cheerleader for Michigan here. One of the big
place.
Yeah, it's a good place. I agree totally. One of the biggest complaints I hear from all companies in the automotive industry, especially in North America, is a difficulty in hiring the talent that they need, especially engineers. Jason, have you run into this?
Of course. As the expansion of the business, we run into this problem. But I can share some things we do, which is very beneficial. We look at a couple of things we do, and we bring the internship, work with the local university, bring the young student, training them to be a future engineers. We also leverage a global workforce. Like our global programs can be running in US, Mexico, China, or Europe. Leverage that. Certainly, we think it's very beneficial to bring some local retirees back to the work.
Oh, interesting.
We feel it's very, very helpful for that.
To go tap into that retiree market.
Exactly. We think we already doing that.
Yeah. Very interesting. Ken, have you run into this issue of not being able to hire the talent that you need?
Yeah, I would say probably for us it will be even more difficult because 99% people we interviewed, they couldn't pronounce the company name anyway.
I hope I haven't done too bad of a job.
Yeah, so I think that at the end, the issue is not about the hiring. The issue is how do you give the people space and help them to grow? As long as they see that, I always say it's very difficult to manage people. In today's environment, you cannot manage people, but you can lead people, you can help people, you can support them to build their own career. So as long as you have that environment and the people believe it, then they're going to come. So from that point of view, we have been pretty lucky.
Dazong, how do you advise people about this?
Well, sure. That I live in Beijing right now, so in terms of a shortage of people, I think the problem over there maybe is tenfold worse. Okay, because their auto industry is expanding rapidly, the industry is much younger. So when I was CEO of Beijing Auto, we got a tough time to find good people. In fact, we sometimes come over here. Okay.
Is that right?
The point made by Jason on the retiree, I think there's just tremendous resources that can benefit everyone. So.
I know when I met you over at the conference in Wuhan, I ran into automakers in the Wuhan area who were complaining, oh, it's hard to keep people. They want to move to the coast. And then I talked to other automakers on the coast and they say, well, we're losing people to the interior because the cost of living is cheaper in the interior. So I guess it's a global problem.
Global problem.
It is everywhere.
Yeah.
So, Pin, let me come back to you. We talked about, what you found advantageous or attracted you to North America, but what are the advantages for you being here? Do you see that this would make your company more competitive being in the North American market?
Yeah, of course. You just look at this show that tells you, we're going to go down, we're going to go up, right? So this is a great time in the United States. Although China did 22 million, but don't forget in the last 4 or 5 years, on the average growth, I think the USA is better than China. Okay, so this is a growing market, and this is a market nobody can ignore. So we're very lucky to be here. And obviously there's a lot of special resources that USA has that China doesn't have today. So now the question is, how do you try to utilize that and to maximize the benefit out of this? So I think, we're very happy and in terms of tremendous growth potential. And you never know, at this booth, who will be your customer or who will be your partner or who might be your company at the end. You never know.
You never know, that's right. Jason, you sort of touched on this already. It's an American company that you purchased here, but you said there's benefits that you can bring to China.
Exactly, tremendous. This world is getting so small. China is growing, US growing, but China needs a lot of expertise, technology, good product. That's what the market needs. So.
And Dazong, you've been saying all along, this is a great place for Chinese suppliers to locate because you've been saying this will help make them more competitive.
Right. See, the auto is the industry, it's a scale driven. Okay? You want to be a real player, you need to go global. I think a lot of Chinese suppliers start to realize that. So that's why you will see more of them coming this way. And just this year, the first 6 months, the direct investment from China to US gone up 290%. So I can see that trend will continue because the supply want to come out here, become global, and because of the government, they start encouraging the companies in China come, do some direct overseas investment. They're going to change their approval regime from approval to something kind of like a registration. So that'll make a lot easier for the people who want to go overseas. So.
I love talking with you guys because I've said this before, but I'll say it again. When I talk to the Chinese who have come to the Detroit area, they don't see closed up factories, they see nothing but opportunity. And that's what I'm getting, the message that I'm getting from the three of you here today.
Definitely.
Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, with that, I'd like to wrap this up, but I want to very much thank you all for participating in this panel. It's been terrific to learn what you're thinking about the North American market here.
Pleasure.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Very good. Once again, we've got one more panel left, organized by the Center for Automotive Research, all going to be diving into lightweighting, but we've got something else for you to take a look at while we get that panel ready.
From Shanghai to the Silicon Valley, the auto industry may make news around the globe, but there's only one spot to get your daily dose. Check out Autoline Daily at Autoline.tv, Monday through Friday at noon Eastern. Autoline Daily, for the concise word on everything cars.
I got a Dodge, and him and his brother both were Chevy guys. And one day came home with a Ford, and we were like, wow, are you kidding me? I really like the payload. All 2,300 pounds gives me the extra edge I need. The great EcoBoost motor, great power, and great efficiency. I would never guess this is a V6. Felt like a V8 truck. Very excited to go with the Ford. I'm very happy with it. Best truck for your buck?
Make the switch to Ford F-150. Get 0% financing or $1,500 cash towards your trade on F-150. See your local Ford dealer today.
There's only one talk show that covers the issues and executives that drive the auto industry. Turn to Autoline This Week every Friday at Autoline.tv or on your local PBS stations across America. Autoline This Week. You can't get more inside the industry.
How long you been here, John? All day long?
Since Sunday.
Yeah, yeah.
Welcome back to the Autoline Supplier Symposium, coming to you from the floor of the 2014 North American International Auto Show. It's Industry Days. This place is jam-packed with people who work in the industry. We're in the Ford display, and boy, is it attracting a crowd. But now, let's get to our final panel of the day. We're going to dive into the topic of lightweighting, and I've got to add, this panel was organized by the Center for Automotive Research, and that explains why I'm going to introduce the first member of this panel, Jay Barron, the CEO of the Center for Automotive Research.
Thank you, John.
Great having you here.
Thank you.
Also joining us, Matthew Marks, the chairman for the American Chemistry Council, also the automotive marketing manager for SABIC, and great having you here, Matthew.
Thank you, John.
We're also joined by Randall Scheps with the Aluminum Association Group, but also the marketing director for Alcoa. Great having you as well.
Thank you.
And boy, you know, it's appropriate that we've got this aluminum representation. We're hearing so much about the new Ford F-150, but Jay, aluminum's not the only story. There's a lot going on in lightweighting.
I have never heard the discussion around lightweighting as much as I have this week. It's been probably the number one topic, I think, and a lot of the new vehicles have been getting launched. It's aluminum, it's composites, it's high-strength steel. Those are probably the three big materials that are really playing a role with this lightweighting. And you know, the thing about making a car lighter is it helps every aspect of the vehicle. It performs better, you get better mileage, it's got secondary benefits, you can downsize the engine, you can do all kinds of things. So it's a win-win-win when you can lightweight the car.
Yeah, really goes faster and handles better too.
Yeah, it stops faster too, yeah.
That's right. But it's not just the materials, right? It's the processing. We're seeing breakthroughs in manufacturing that's allowing this.
That is the big deal for lightweighting. You know, a lot of people say, did you take a steel part out and put an aluminum part in, or an aluminum part out and the composites part? It's not that simple. It's the whole supply chain is affected by this, and the way you design the car is different, the way you tool it is different, the way you fabricate the parts is different, the way you put them together is different. So the whole supply chain has to change as you change these materials, which is one reason why the lightweighting history has been so slow and incremental, but it's starting to pick up speed this year.
Yeah, Matthew, we've seen the industry go back and forth. Back in the 80s, it went very heavily in plastics, or at least some automakers did, and then they sort of backed out of that, and maybe now it's starting to come. Where are we in this cycle?
Well, John, plastics and composites continues to grow. Over the past 20 years, we've seen a twofold increase in the use of plastics and polymer composites used on cars today. Several examples around the show today I'd like to speak about with you today. You know, 10% of the mass of a typical vehicle is made up of plastics, which represents about 50% of the volume of a car. Many people don't know that. So it's a great time to be in automotive, to be able to address the future fuel economy and greenhouse gas emissions requirements that we're seeing, and plastics is one way to get there.
We're seeing a lot newer applications too, plastics finding their way into areas of the car that a decade or so ago would have never happened.
Absolutely. There's a lot of discussion on the F-150, not just from a mass perspective, but take a look at the headlamps on that vehicle, the aerodynamic ability or aerodynamic efficiency that you're able to attain, parts integration, mass reduction. There's about 8 pounds of plastic that's in that particular. We'll talk a lot about carbon fiber reinforced plastics today as well. You know, the North American Car of the Year, the Chevy Corvette, on the hood and on the roof, is just one example. You know, Ford has used it, the Chrysler has used it, and then the BMW i3, a great example where leveraging the strength to weight ratio, the superior stiffness to weight ratio, and its energy absorbing capabilities, 6 to 12 times energy absorbing capability to that of steel. So you're seeing some very good examples of how it's being used today.
And Randall, let's talk aluminum a little bit. You know, it's not a new material to the automotive industry. It goes back almost 100 years in some applications.
Right.
And we've seen Jaguar, Land Rover, Audi, really in the last decade get into aluminum in a big way. But when you start talking F-150s, is this the tipping point, or are we going to see a lot more like the F-150 going forward?
Absolutely. I mean, we think this really is the tip of the iceberg, that you've been in the, you know, this has been in the high-end luxury vehicles for quite some time. Technology is very well understood, but this is taking a step into mass market, which is, it is incredibly exciting.
Now, some people have told me that Ford has essentially locked up sheet aluminum availability by going with this F-150 program. So if somebody else came along right now and said, hey, I want to make my car or truck out of aluminum, could the aluminum suppliers supply it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So capacity and all that's not an issue?
Well, we're in this dance with our customers where we're creating the capacity for them as the programs come along. So we have the ability to bring more capacity on as it's needed. The only thing we ask is that please bring us in early. You know, don't call us 12 months or 18 months before job one.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Bring us in for 5 years from now.
3 years. 3 years ahead of time.
Oh, okay, 3 years at a time. Jay, the industry stuck with steel for so long because, boy, is it easy to work with. Boy, you can do so much with it, and it's so inexpensive compared to the other materials. What's the industry going to do? I mean, car prices have got to go up if we go to these more expensive materials.
Well, car prices are going up whether you go to these new materials or not. Okay. We've got to get better fuel economy. We've got to get lower emissions, and we have to. These cars have to be safer. There's crashworthiness and so on. There's a role for we think there's a role for all materials in the car. And I think what you're seeing is this, you know, historically it's been a slow incremental change from steel. You maybe go to a plastic part or a composite part or to an aluminum part, and that's been a slow incremental step, in part because of the slowness of converting over the supply chain. There's always been a chicken and egg issue about when am I going to introduce a new material in the car, and will the supply be ready for it? That's true in steel as much as it is aluminum or any other material. So that issue's always been with us, which is one reason why there's always a slow progression to new materials. But when you look at the Ford F-150 making as dramatic a shift as that, as Randall has said, this could be the tipping point where we're going to go forward and eventually get to the point where we're going to use the best material for the car. The supply chain will have to just figure out how to keep up, and that's really where we're headed. There will be a role for steel. Steel is very strong. It's right now in the short term, at least for the next 10 years or so, you're going to see a lot of very high strength steel around the safety cage for safety reasons, for crashworthy. You know, in addition to the fuel economy, we want cars to be safer. We want them to be able to crash, nothing to go into the cockpit of the car, and steel's very good at that. So, you know, we think the future is a mix of these materials depending on the need of that application around the vehicle.
Could we see more than a mix, maybe a hybrid combination? I mean, like a steel backbone encased in plastic, or am I dreaming too much here?
No, you're not. I mean, let's look at the Ford F-150 just for a second. You have an aluminum body on top of a high-strength steel frame. You have the i3 with a composite body on an aluminum frame. You're already seeing these mixes today. You typically see maybe a mix of two major materials like I just described. I think you're going to see more of a mix of multiple materials as we go forward. That's what I would describe as the mixed material car. And the other interesting thing about this evolution is the auto industry requires a lot of technology from their suppliers. Companies like is represented here. This technology development's occurring in the supply base. The auto companies have to figure out, if we're going to have a mixed material car, where do we bring this together? We need them to develop a mixed, because, you know, if you're going to work on aluminum, that's what you're going to work on. If you're going to work on composites, you're going to work on composites. But how do you work on a mixed material car? There's not a venue where that happens. And that's one of the areas that we're trying to work on a car, is to bring this part of the industry together to co-develop mixed material applications.
Matthew, let's go back to this cost issue for a minute, because even though composites would be more expensive than steel, there's some offsets that you can get, right? I mean, part consolidation and things like that. Talk about some of the things that the auto industry should be looking at from that vantage point.
Yeah, exactly, John. You know, the superior value that plastics and composites bring, from the ability to take mass out the ability to integrate components, to take individual components out, is really what sets it apart from the other materials that are used to produce vehicles. A great example is the Nissan Rogue liftgate. It was the Grand Award winner, SPE 2013. It was an all-plastic inner, all-plastic outer, adhesively bonded together. It was a 30% mass savings to its predecessor, and the outer panel, for example, compared to sheet metal, was a cost reduction. So those types of systems are what really allow us to move forward. I mentioned adhesive bonding real quick. If I can follow back on, we're doing additional research now. Michigan State University, ACC is cooperating with to see how we can take current structural adhesive systems to the next level. You know, not just on the BMW i3, which we mentioned how it's adhesively bonded, but how can we use that in other applications?
You know, Randall said, you know, hey, we'll give you all the aluminum you want, just give us a heads up that, you know, you want it. I got to believe the things that you're talking about too means that you got to get involved early in the program.
Absolutely. Every one of our member companies, they like to tout how we want to be involved, and that's how you leverage the values that the materials bring. You know, parts integration, superior impact strength, superior strength to weight ratio, stiffness to weight ratio, but we need to be involved up front. Another example I'd like to put out there, the Opel Astra Sport seat pan was a composite woven material and then integrated with an injection molded composite as well. So you're really leveraging the benefits of both categories of composites, not just the woven materials that you see on display here at this show.
I think the challenge the car makers are facing is they have to find big bites of weight to take out. So this era of let's go optimize this part and take out 1/3 of a pound here and 1/2 a pound here and 2 pounds there, they really have got to find weight by the hundreds of pounds to take out of these cars, and that's what's leading to these big material shifts.
Okay, my understanding is you can buy steel, I'll make up a number, 32 cents a pound, aluminum, 75 cents a pound?
Well, you have to look beyond, I think, just the pound to pound. You know, it's not a commodity product. You have to look beyond the pound to pound comparison, because aluminum, as Jay said, allows you can lightweight the car, you can save money in other areas. So it's really about what's the cost to get that next mile per gallon out of the vehicle, and lightweighting with aluminum is very competitive in terms of the cost to get that next mile per gallon.
And for my and the audience's benefit, walk us through a little bit, what are some of those other cost offsets? Once you go to a lighter vehicle, how do you take cost out?
Well, I think Ford has sort of given us a glimpse into the future here with the new F-150. They've taken 700 pounds of weight out of the vehicle, and if you notice, they've also announced a smaller V6 that will be added to the vehicle, a 2.7 liter, I think, turbocharged EcoBoost V6. So that's how this interplay works. Take a big chunk of weight out of the body, and you can step down to a smaller engine. The consumer sees no difference, except he sees markedly better gas mileage.
And I imagine that cascades through the vehicle.
Absolutely.
So the brakes can be smaller.
Absolutely.
You know, everything that attaches, everything comes down, and that's where you get some of the cost offsets.
Right. But the big hit is really in the powertrain and the ability to step it down as you take the big bites of weight out.
So you see that as the defining engineering challenge for this decade now is we've done all the easy powertrain stuff. Now it's lightweighting?
Yes, this is getting the low-hanging fruit. And these are very aggressive fuel economy and emissions requirements. Very aggressive that there's no car company that really knows exactly how to get there to 2025 to get achieve these very aggressive levels of performance. So we started doing the easy things. We downsized the engine, we had if you want to call this easy, direct injection, 9-speed transmissions, turbocharging. Then we start to go to maybe a little bit of electrification and hybrid. Well, that all costs money too. So a lot of this is driven by these regulations. It's never been good to have weight in the car. We've always, Henry Ford wanted to get weight out of the car. So this is not a new phenomenon. It's just really caught on that we are at that point in the tree as we're moving up the hierarchy, that this is the number one issue today. We've heard there's no auto company in the world that isn't trying to get weight out of the car and trying to do it as cheaply as possible.
Now let's talk about sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that in our conversations with customers, what they're seeing is they're reaching almost the point of diminishing returns with steel auto bodies. They've optimized these things hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. They run these very complex models, and they're able to save 5 pounds or 6 pounds or 10 pounds. They're just reaching that point of diminishing returns.
Okay, one point of practicality. who repairs these things in the field? I mean, isn't that a big learning curve, Randall?
Well, it's, I would say that the Audi A8, which is an all aluminum body, was introduced about 20 years ago. When that was first introduced, there was a limited number of places that could be repaired. Now you've got a network really of independent body shops around the country that can repair and work on those aluminum parts. And I think that as the F-150 hits the street, my suspicion is that Ford has thought that through very, very, very thoroughly, and that repair won't be an issue.
Matthew, same question. You've cited the BMW i3 and its carbon fiber body. That's going to require a lot of teaching in the field as well.
Well, yeah, we mentioned the carbon fiber body, but also it's a plastic intensive vehicle. It's a multi-material vehicle, it's a plastic intensive vehicle. So they've got external body panels which are all plastic on that particular one. So they're able to take it off, put them back on if there's any issues with that. So developments continue with respect to carbon fiber reinforcements. We're doing advanced work, as I mentioned before, with Michigan State University on adhesive bonds and techniques to join materials of compatible nature as well as dissimilar materials that can be potentially repaired in the future. So those investigations continue today.
The other thing going on is that the steels are getting harder to repair as well. You've got high-strength steels that can't be welded. They're very hard to cut. So everything, I would say, every technology is sort of making these cars a little more difficult to repair.
Well, I for one cannot wait to drive this F-150. I want to get the sense of what a truck that's 700 pounds lighter feels like.
I was talking to a colleague the other day, and he said, that's like taking my Harley out of the back of the truck. That's roughly the weight of a Harley. So that's a huge amount of weight.
That's a great weight.
And don't forget the aerodynamic improvements on the F-150. So whether it's plastic on a front fascia or what you can do with headlamps today, it's all coming together to help increase fuel economy. Whether it's mass reduction with what you can get with materials represented here, or whether it's aerodynamic improvements, which is what you're capable of getting with a lot of the plastics and composites.
Well, that's exactly right. Look, we're going to wrap it up. I want to thank all three of you. I especially want to thank you, Jay, for the Center for Automotive Research putting this panel together.
It's terrific.
Been terrific.
Thank you.
I hope all of you that have been watching have really enjoyed this Supplier Symposium, Day 1 and Day 2. We've had a lot of different discussion about what's going on in the supplier industry. As you can tell, it's exciting, it's dynamic, there's a lot going on here. Tell all your friends about the show. You can watch it on our YouTube channel. Just look for the Autoline Network, or come on over to our website at autoline.tv. But for now, John McElroy signing off from the 2014 North American International Auto Show, concluding the Autoline Supplier Symposium. Good job. You guys moved it. You moved it. You make my job easy.
Yeah, I can't wait to drive that truck. That'll be very exciting.
Yeah.
I mentioned Ford invited suppliers to the test track, so you got to drive.
Oh, did you drive it?
Not the newest one, but you progressively go through the truck to the SUV to the Taurus show.
The Autoline Supplier Symposium is brought to you by our signature sponsor, Ford Motor Company. Go further. And also by Continental Automotive, the future in motion. Visit continental-automotive.com. And Federal Mogul, the powertrain. It's what drives us.